For nearly 80 years, the Metropolitan District Commission, known as the MDC, has been providing area residents with clear, clean drinking water and dependable wastewater treatment and other services. The MDC, with its 30,000 acres of land, trails, and reservoirs, also maintains some of the most popular recreation sites in Connecticut. The following informational and educational program is a presentation of the MDC to provide you with more information about the programs and services that we offer. The MDC is committed to protecting our environment and to enhancing the quality of life in this region.
Welcome to Newsline's Year-End Review Show. I'm Eric Clemens. Thanks so much for being with us today. 2010 and the MDC, what a year it's been. And throughout the year on this program, Newsline, and through the district's quarterly newsletters and bill inserts, we've tried to keep you up to date on the many aspects of the district's Clean Water Project and the many other projects the MDC provides this region. Now today on the program, we'll round up some of the topics we've discussed in 2010. First, starting with a close look at the region's water supply system, how it was developed, why it's one of the best systems in the nation, and why we need to make sure we protect it for generations to come. Take a look. How our drinking water supply system came to be and how we can protect it for generations to come. First, when premier engineers created the MDC's drinking water supply system in the early 1800s, they knew that this enormous undertaking would affect millions of people for decades to come. As a result of their ingenuity and their foresight, now this is remarkable, because of their planning back in the early 1800s, 85% of our drinking water system arrives at our faucets using gravity and not electricity. That's quite a system, and to tell us a little bit more about it, let's introduce you to Bill Kennedy, who is the manager of the water treatment system here for the Metropolitan District Commission. Bill, thank you so much for being a guest with us. First things first, I understand we're going to get a little bit of history lessons from here today, some folks, but this is very interesting stuff. Prior to the Civil War, when Hartford was a small town on the river, Connecticut River that is, the drinking water was pumped out of the Connecticut River and reached us. Tell us about the planning that even went into that.
Yeah, well, just a little bit before I get into the planning, just a little bit about Hartford and how it came to be. It was the northernmost point on the Connecticut River that deep ships could reach. So sort of by default, it became a port. And it had connections with other East Coast and foreign seaports. And as a result, it became a fairly prosperous trade business in Hartford. And as a result of that, population started to grow. So as of the turn of the century, around 1800, there's about 5,000 people in Hartford. And at this very same time, the concept of a piped water system was gaining momentum. The city of Boston, the city of New York were already laying aqueducts, which were basically just logs laid end to end with boreholes, 2-inch, 3-inch boreholes, and then buried underground, which obviously were very leaky, but they served the purpose at the time. Hartford had a number of efforts similar to Boston and New York to build these types of aqueducts, and they all failed. So for about 50 years, from 1800 to 1850, there was still no pressurized water system for the city of Hartford. So at that point in time, around 1850, it became very important now to begin looking at how can we build a system, because at this point there was a lot of things going on in Hartford. There was competition for inventors to move to Hartford. There was competition for manufacturers to move to Hartford. There was competition between New Haven and Hartford to become the capital city. The railroad was just being completed in the city of Hartford. There was a lot of things happening. Hartford was becoming established as the insurance and banking center. Sure. And it was also identified as one of the most densely populated cities in the United States at that time, around the 1850s. So industrialization really forced the issue, and after many years of struggle and debate, there's a whole lot of very interesting, colorful history about the politics and everything that's surrounding this whole thing, because it was a very big thing. to have a pressurized water system in your city. After all these years of struggle, a system was planned and was built in 1855, and it was built on Asylum Hill.
Okay.
The first system, it was a 10 million gallon reservoir on Asylum Hill. There was 9 miles of pipes that transmitted that water out into the city to the customers, the manufacturing businesses and things like that needed water. And there was a massive 150 horsepower coal-driven steam-powered pump that would pump water from the Connecticut River up to this reservoir, which was called the Lord's Hill Reservoir. So in 1855, the city had its first water system.
All right. Now, how was it identified that the reservoir would be where it would be located back in these early days, or even additional reservoirs?
Yeah, well, what happened from that point on, immediately upon building that system, it became very evident, because the city was growing very quickly, that more had to be done. Water quality was deteriorating. All of the effluent from the different manufacturing plants, tanneries, mills, things like that were being dumped into the Connecticut River, which was also the source of your drinking water. So there was a quality problem as well as, you know, in the cost of pumping was very expensive. There were pressure problems for some of the higher elevations in the system, and increasing demand and also the need for fire protection, which did not exist. There was very limited ability to fight fires at that point. So about 5 years after this Lord's Hill system was built, a system known as the Trout Brook Project was proposed to the public, and they actually had to make a vote at that point in time whether they wanted to continue with their pump system or go to a gravitation system. And this was a very important decision, and it sort of led us to where we are now. The decision to go with a gravitation system was made by the public back in the middle of the 1800s, and we've developed that system from that point on. And what it involved was building a reservoir in West Hartford, which is now known as Reservoir 1, and then piping the water into Hartford. So we get the benefit of gravity and water getting into the city without pumping, plus water quality was greatly improved, because at that point in time the Trout Brook was a pristine source of water. Sure. There was no development out in West Hartford, and at around 1867, the Reservoir went online, started serving the city. There was about 35,000 customers. And then from that point on, following this concept of gravity, the Nepog Reservoir and the Barkhamsted Reservoir were built in 1920 and 1940 respectively. So everything was built so that it would be at a higher elevation and work its way down into the city following gravity.
Kind of going into my next question, exactly how far does that water travel, of course, down from the reservoirs using gravity to get to our treatment plants and so forth, and not energy and electricity like we talked about earlier?
Right. Our largest reservoir, the Barkhamsted Reservoir, is about 15 miles from our treatment plants, and it's about 250 feet higher than the treatment plants. And we have about 50 miles of pipes, and we actually have a couple of tunnels that go through Avon Mountain to get the water to our treatment plants. And again, this requires no pumping at all.
That's pretty amazing. Now the treatment plant is the next stop. After the treatment plant, what's the next journey for the water?
After the treatment plant, it goes into our distribution system, and our distribution system consists of about 1,500 miles of pipes right now. And the treatment plants are about 350 feet higher than Hartford, so the water gets to our customers in Hartford at 100 pounds of pressure and even higher, just through gravity alone. 85% of our customers receive water just by gravity alone, and this is sort of typical of the early systems that were built. New York and Boston are very similar in the way they were designed and built.